My life was defined by a single, catastrophic mistake: the misattribution of the Byzantine scrolls, which led to my professional ruin and the public shaming of my mentor, Dr. Alistair Finch. I was now a discredited historian, wrestling with crushing guilt. That guilt is what led me to the Aethelred Library. It wasn't just an archive. It was a legend, private, subterranean vault built a century ago by a reclusive occult scholar. The legend stated that every volume housed there was the unwritten autobiography of someone who died too soon, a record of the life they would have lived. I convinced Dr. Finch, an old man whose pride was as brittle as parchment, to join me. He represented the legitimacy I'd lost, and I hoped that solving this genuine mystery would earn us both some small measure of redemption. The library was located beneath an abandoned estate, accessible only through a hidden, iron-bound door, disguised as a wine cellar entrance. The air rushing up the stairs when we finally levered the door open was impossibly cold, carrying the sharp, metallic scent of ozone mixed with aged paper and dust. The first thing that struck us when we flicked on our battery-powered lamps was the sheer volume of books, thousands upon thousands of them, filling floor-to-ceiling shelves that receded into the shadows. The library was circular, like a panopticon designed for solitary reading. There were no windows, no natural light, only cold, smooth stone walls. It was a space designed for total isolation. As we began to unpack our equipment, spectral cameras, air quality monitors, the silence pressed in. It was a profound, unnatural silence, the kind that felt less like an absence of sound and more like a presence waiting to be addressed. Dr. Finch, typically verbose, became quiet, running a trembling hand along the spine of a leather-bound book. "Elias," he murmured, his voice startlingly loud in the void. "These are all clean. No dust, no wear, as if they were shelved yesterday." We pulled the first book at random. Its cover was blank, save for a small, embossed silver numeral, 47. Inside, the pages were filled with meticulously handwritten script, a flawless, elegant cursive detailing the life of a woman named Elias Vance, a life that included a successful career, a loving family, and a peaceful death at the age of 91. I stared at the name. Elias Vance. It was my younger sister's name. She had died in a car accident at age 17. The book detailed the 47 years of life she never got to live. A piercing wave of guilt hit me, not just mine, but a collective, deep sorrow. That's when we noticed the change. The temperature in the central reading area had dropped suddenly, so low that our breath plumed white. A faint, dry whisper, like the sound of a silk dress brushing against paper, drifted down from the upper shelves. It was the Curator, the unseen intelligence of the library. It was acknowledging our presence. Dr. Finch, his face pale and eyes wide, stumbled back from the shelf. He pointed to a small, newly materialized book placed conspicuously on the central reading table. Its spine was stark white, and the number 63 was faintly embossed on the cover. He flipped it open. The handwriting was identical to the other book, but the title page bore a name we recognized. Professor Julian Vance. Julian Vance, a brilliant colleague of ours, who had died last month in a freak lab accident, exactly 63 years short of his expected lifespan. The library wasn't just an archive, it was a current ledger, and it had just confirmed its sentience. The library was a sentient trap, and the curator was its icy, silent guardian. We now knew the rules. The books were real, their presence proof that the library was capable of interacting with the fabric of reality and recording potential timelines. The air remained bitterly cold, and the subtle scent of ozone intensified, suggesting a constant expenditure of supernatural energy. Dr. Finch, his academic skepticism shattered, became fixated on the white-spined book of Julian Vance. He spent hours poring over its pages, looking for answers, while I tried to understand the library's pattern. I used my spectral camera to sweep the aisles. The images revealed faint, residual energy concentrated on the upper levazer, ghostly, shimmering silhouette moving between the shelves. The curator was watching us, moving silently, organizing its collection. I found another book, volume 19, The Unwritten Life of a Childhood Friend who had drowned at the age of 10. I opened it and read a passage detailing a moment of profound joy a day at a lake, a moment I had never shared with him. As I read, a terrible sense of paranoia gripped me. The library was using its contents to exploit our sense of loss and guilt. It was trying to break us down emotionally. Ben, our cameraman, was the first to fully crack. He wasn't usually superstitious, but the profound silence and the freezing air had eroded his composure. He was setting up a shot near the central desk when he screamed, a strangled sound that was swallowed instantly by the heavy silence. He pointed at the polished wooden desk. There, written in a condensation streak from the cold air, were the words. The scrolls were real. This was the core of my professional guilt, the very accusation that destroyed my career. The library knew my secret shame. The curator wasn't just collecting the lives of the deceased. It was observing the living, pulling out the deepest regrets and lies. The library was demanding a confessional payment for the knowledge it offered. Dr. Finch, overhearing Ben's muffled cries and reading the terrifying message, finally looked up from Julian's book. His eyes were wild. Elias, I found it. Julian wrote about the debt. This library doesn't just record lives, it holds them hostage. The curator demands a price for the knowledge it grants. It doesn't want money. It wants unwritten potential. Finch then showed me the final, chilling entry in Julian's book. It wasn't written by Julian. It was written in the same elegant, flawless script as the rest of the volumes, seemingly added after Julian's death. It detailed the final meeting Julian should have had before his accidental meeting to expose a fraud in the academic world. By dying prematurely, Julian left a debt, an incomplete act of potential, and the library claimed his unwritten life as payment. A sharp, bone-deep feeling of cold swept through the room, and a book volume 5 slipped off a high shelf and landed directly at my feet. The spine was a familiar, cracked brown leather. On the title page, the ornate script read, Dr. Alistair Finch. The number 5 represented the 5 years of life he was expected to live before his recent heart condition took him. The curator had delivered his volume. The pressure of the debt was now directly on us. We had been warned. The only way to stop the curator from sealing the volume and ending his current life was to either pay the debt or destroy the ledger. The presence of Dr. Finch's volume, the story of his remaining 5 unwritten years, was a tangible threat. The cold was now localized around the central desk, and the scent of ozone was so thick it burned our nostrils. The curator's message was clear: pay the debt of unfulfilled potential, or your current life is forfeit to the shelves. We had 2 problems. First, the debt. My past guilt over the scrolls, Alistair's impending death. Julian's the library demanded closure on all of it. Second, my spectral camera registered the curator's silhouette coalescing near the book return chute, which was actually a deep black hole in the floor. The silhouette was tall, gaunt, and carried a terrible, icy authority, ready to claim its due. Alistair, shaking but resolute, grabbed his book. We can't destroy the library, Elias. It's too vast. We have to pay the debt. Your scrolls and Julian's, they both relate to academic fraud. The library wants the truth to be written down. The internal conflict within me was intense, revealing the truth about the scrolls, which would exonerate me, but ruin several powerful figures. Felt like a dangerous game orchestrated by the curator, but I had no choice. We had to write the truth to pay the debt. We had brought a rare, blank leather journaler, perfect, empty volume. Alistair handed me the pen. Write the full truth, Elias. Let the library absorb the closure. Thus, I began to write, detailing the deliberate misattribution, naming the powerful men involved. The air in the library screamed. It wasn't a sound, but a tearing sensation, like fabric being ripped. The curator's silhouette lunged towards the central table, its form briefly solidifying into a figure wearing a long, ash-gray vestment. I rode faster, fueled by terror and adrenaline, detailing the conspiracy behind the scrolls. I finished the final sentence, and the historical record was deliberately and criminally falsified for financial gain. I slammed the journal shut. The moment the journal closed, the spectral figure hit the table. It didn't touch the blank journal. It reached past it, for Dr. Finch's volume number 5. The library didn't want the confession. It wanted the life potential. The truth was just the currency. Finch shouted, a sound full of terror and resignation. And I shoved the blank journal into the curator's translucent hand. The figure hesitated, looking from the blank Booker volume of future truth to Finch's unwritten past. The curator was bound by the logic of potential. It couldn't take a life when a potentially greater story was offered. The spectral form recoiled, then slowly, deliberately, placed Finch's volume back on the table. It turned, moving towards the book return chute. Bend its hand. The blank journal began to write itself, filling with the full, unwritten truth of the academic scandal. The curator dropped the filled journal into the chute, the library's way of completing the ledger. The immense cold and the scent of ozone vanished instantly. The library was just a cold, dusty room again. The curse was temporarily satisfied. We grabbed our few remaining belongings and scrambled back up the cellar stairs. We drove away in silence, the rising sun casting long, pale shadows. We were alive. But when we stopped for gas, Alistair was trembling. He handed me the journal that the Curator had rejected. It wasn't the blank journal I'd written in. It was a completely different volume, bound in black leather, the spine read Elias Vance. I flipped it open. The title page was blank, but the first chapter was already written in that elegant, flawless script. It was the story of my life, written up to the moment I stepped into the library. The final entry read, Elias Vance, having paid the debt of the scrolls, now owes the life he will live. His unwritten volume remains open, ready for its final entry. The Curator hadn't claimed a life. It had placed a claim on mine. I am now living my unwritten life, knowing that the final entry, my death, is being recorded right now, waiting to be sealed by the icy hand of the librarian. I am merely filling in the pages of a book already on the shelf.